All right, so now let's try to convert a non-value returning function to a value returning function. And that is very, very simple. You just need to make a small changes to make a function, like either change it from value returning function to non-value returning function or vice versa. So if I want to change this function and convert it to a value returning function, that simply means I need to have the keyword return and return something back, all right? So the thing that is important in this sum problem is this sentence that I'm creating, okay, which is a result of adding two values to each other, right? So I simply, instead of printing it, I'm going to return it. Okay, you can keep the parentheses if you want, you can take them out, it's up to you. They don't have any effect on your result. So now I am returning this sentence, and if I call that function, so if I say, for instance, similar to the previous version, actually let me go to the previous version of it, which it was non-value returning function, and try to call that function. Since in this example, since it is a non-value returning function, I simply need to say sum problem and pass some numbers to it. In this example, I'm passing two numbers to it. So let's pass 7 and 1. And simply that function takes those two numbers. 7 is going to be replaced, A is going to be replaced by 7, B is going to be our number 1, and then you just replace them and you do the calculation, just place them wherever appropriate, and then you get the result, okay? So simply whatever you're passing to that function is going to be assigned to A and B, and then you do the calculation, and then you're printing it, okay? So if I run it, I should see the sum of 7 and 1 is 8, right? Which what we expected to get. So now let's try to change it to a value returning function. So instead of directly printing the result inside that function, I'm going to return its value, right? So now this is a value returning function because I have that keyword return in it. I'm returning something back to wherever you're calling that function. All right, so for now, I'm not changing anything in my main. I'm going to run it. We want to see what we get and see what we are missing. All right, so let's run it. I'm not getting any output this time. What happened? Like the only thing that I changed was I changed print and replaced it by keyword return, right? And that caused not getting any output. Let's take a closer look why that happened. In the previous example, when you had print, you simply call that function, pass those numbers, did the calculation, create a sentence, and printed it here. Okay, so you said, okay, I did all of the things that you asked me. Now I'm displaying the result using print function. If you do not print and instead of print you return it, that means you're simply returning the result, which is this line, okay, which you created that sentence and you're returning that line right here. All right, so if you simply have that line here and replace it with the function call, you're not going to get anything because you're not printing it. You're not displaying it. If you do not display something, you're not going to see it. All right, so that means if you call a value returning function, that means you need to do something with the result that is got back to you. Right? In this case, I want to print it. Sometimes you want to use the result in a calculation if it's a number, similar to what we did with f. Okay, we used it in some calculation. We added two calls to that function. All right, so it's up to you what you want to do with the result, with the return value. In this case, again, I just want to simply print it. Okay, so now if I run it, I see the result. Now I know I'm calling that function, I'm passing those two values to it. The sentence is created and it's going to be replaced by that function call after it is done. After you go and create it, you return that sentence and you replace that function call with the return value. And you're simply printing it, right? It's that simple. So you're going to get the exact same thing. So I'm going to go back to the function call. So remember, with value returning function, something is coming back to you, coming back to the function call, and you need to decide what you want to do with that result. If you want to display it, if you want to use it in the calculation, it's up to you what you want to do. Is up to the problem that you have in hand. All right, so now I'm going to go back and just convert it back to a non-value returning function. So we have both example of non-value returning function and value returning function in one program. So simply what I did was I changed return and put print instead of return. So I'm not returning anything inside this function. And I took out the print because if I have the print here, I'm going to get an extra output that I do not want to get. I'm going to get the result plus none. All right. I went over this one, but I'm going to go over it one more time. Okay. The reason that I'm getting this none is because I'm trying to print a result of a non-value returning function. Remember, non-value returning function does not return anything. So if I want to print a return value, I'm going to get none. So when you call this function, it goes to that function, it performs whatever you ask it to do. In this case, it's printing the result and it's not returning anything, so it returns none. Okay, so this whole thing is going to be replaced by none. So you're going to see the output because you have this print function here. And then if you're trying to print a result of that function, you're going to get none. All right. So be careful. If you have a non-value returning function, you are not returning anything. So don't try to use its return value. But if you have a value returning function, you can simply, and you should, use the return value to do whatever you need to do. For our next example, I want to get two strings from user, and I want to, like, the first one being user first name and then last name, and I want to combine them and print the last name first name on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to get two input from user in my main, pass it to a function, and then in return I want to get a string which is a combination, like the first name last name combined. Okay, so let's try to do it. So let's go first with the function definition. So I'm going to call this function last first. Okay, and I'm going to get the user first name and then last name as parameters. So I'm getting two values as parameters, and then inside this one I want to return something back. So before I forget, I'm going to put this return keyword, and we will do something here. So for now, let's now go to the main and see what we need to do in main. Okay, because I need to first get two input from user and pass it to this function. But so far what I did was defining that function. All right, and if you run it, you're going to, since you have function definition and you have a statement inside it, is going to like run smoothly, but you're not calling that function, so nothing is going to happen. So if I run it, we only have a function call for some problem, so you're going to get that result. Okay, if you comment this line out, then you're just seeing the main function. All right, if I do not put any statement inside the function and only have the header, you're going to get syntax error. Okay, because you cannot leave any function empty. And since this function is a value returning function, I'm going to put this return keyword, so I don't forget to return a value at the end. Okay, so after I'm done, after I do something, depending on what my problem is, I'm going to return something back to my user. So first thing always that you're going to do is try to figure out, basically define your function, figure out how many parameters you have, and then decide if, like, depending on if it's value returning function, non-value returning function, you know if you need to have the keyword return or not, right? So the problem now that we want to solve is you are getting user first name and last name, and what you want to do is you want to create a string that is last name, comma, space, first name. Okay, so you want to create a string like that. So you have your last name first, and then you have a separator, which is comma, space, and then you have your first name, right? So for example, my name is Eli Ibrahimi, so what I want to do is Ibrahimi, comma, space, Eli. All right, so let's see how we can do it. So let me get two inputs from user, or for now simply we can have last first. So I'm trying to call that function, and I'm going to pass two values to it. So I'm passing first name, I'm passing Alex, Franklin. So I have first name and last name, and I'm calling this function. All right. So basically now Alex comes and replaces first name, right? So basically will be assigned to first name. So from this point onward, your first name is going to be Alex, and that is valid inside this function only. And then Franklin is going to come and be assigned to last name. So inside this function, last name is going to be Franklin, right? So now what I need to do is simply get these two strings and combine them, also add that separator and create another string. Okay, and that is very simple. You can use a string concatenation to do that for you. You can maybe create a new variable and say name equal to last name, which is in this case you're passing Franklin, plus a string concatenation. You're going to have a separator, which is your comma, space, and then concatenate that to first name. All right, so now you created this string, which is a combination of first name, last name, plus the separator, right? And then after you create that, you simply return that name, all right, the string that you created. All right, so let's run this code. What do you expect I get? Would I get the name, right? So let's run it. I'm not getting anything. Why that happened? Why I'm not getting any output? I'm passing Franklin, I'm passing Alex, and to show you that we came inside this function, I'm going to print this statement inside last first. Okay, so let's run it. See, we went inside main, and we also went inside this function last first. But why I'm not getting any output? The reason is we have a value returning function. It returns something back to us. So it's up to us what to do with that return value. Okay? If I just simply call it, I'm going to get the result string, but I'm not printing it to see the result, to see if I did it correctly, right? So if you want to see the result, you need to print the returned value of this function. All right, so when you call this function, it's going to pass the arguments that you have to that function. You're going to create a string, you're returning that string, and after it is done, after you're done executing all of the lines that you have in that function, the result is going to come and replace that call to that function. All right. So at the end, I hopefully am getting Franklin, comma, Alex. All right. And if I print it, I'm going to see the result displayed here. Okay. Here you go. Now, since I printed it, I'm going to see the output. You don't necessarily need to create a new variable to return it, okay? So you can directly take this statement and put it here. Okay, so then you don't need this line. You're just saying, all right, return last name plus comma space first name. So you're directly creating that string when you're returning it. All right, so if you don't want to create a new variable, you can simply just return it. I usually use parentheses around whatever I'm trying to return to. Just, you don't need to use parentheses in this example, but it just helps me to read it easier. Okay, so just try to use stuff that makes your code more readable, and if you run it, you should get the exact same thing. So here you go, Franklin and Alex, and that is what we wanted to get.